So innovation, I like to think of as standard of practice, and then look at the daily modifications that every surgeon likes to think that he or she enters into on a day-to-day basis to deal with what they find that day. And basically, that's how most of us practice. Now, all of you in this audience and many people on this slide are innovating every day as well. From Sidney Crosby to Zach Perlman, who's going to be in Toronto in about 10 days, by the way, to Elton John, to Tiger Woods. These people are innovating every day in small ways. I have no idea why I put this here. I just thought they were a cute couple. So, what we're trying to do at UHN is not only use innovation on a day-to-day basis. What we're trying to do is change the standard of practice. What we're trying to do is find new and better ways to do things surgically that's going to help not only our own patient that we see that day, but the patients of the future. And you've all heard Bob and others say that that's reflective of our purpose statement. We are a caring, creative, and accountable academic hospital transforming healthcare for our patients, our community, and the world. We've been operating under this purpose statement for, I guess, about a year and a half, and I think it's very useful because it applies to everybody who works here, not just surgeons, but medical folks, nurses, housekeepers, everybody who works at this hospital. Now, the other thing when we're thinking about innovation and doing new things with patients, we have to remember the principles of bioethical behavior. And this is not a lecture because you don't want to hear it, and I'm not qualified to give it. But we have to remember the four basic principles. The respect for autonomy, that means if we're going to do something different, the patient has a right to know, has a right to make the decision along with the surgeon as to what is coming. Beneficence, do only good. There's another one called non-maleficence, which is do no harm, which is one of the first things we learn in the Hippocratic Oath. And then social justice. Justice, what is right for the patient, what is right for the community. We have to think of all these things when we're thinking of innovating, whether it be on the spot or whether it be in a planned way. And you might have recognized the Columbus Clause. Before Christopher Columbus embarked and came across to North America in 1491 too, he actually asked his men and told them, he was very honest with them, and he told them what was coming and that he wasn't sure what was coming. I told them he wouldn't sail off the edge of the world, which, as you remember, was flat at that time. But he was very frank with them. They knew what they were getting into. And so that's what's called the Columbus Clause. And that is what every patient has to know in advance if we're going to make some major innovation as a result of that patient's requirements. There have been a lot of articles written, too. You can see here, surgical innovation, too risky to remain unregulated. We have to address innovation by adding some regulation to it, by having a process by which innovation can be introduced that observes that balance that I was talking about. And we do have that process. For about the last 2 years, we've had a process that requires our surgeons, before they do something unusual and not according to the standard of practice, and hopefully according to a new standard of practice, they have to complete a questionnaire, which I then, along with appropriate experts, look at this, evaluate it, make sure that we have all the education appropriate for this procedure, make sure that it's corroborated with experts around the world, and then make plans with nursing, anesthesiology, and so on to go ahead and do the procedure. And this is what happens in words. This is called our Enabling Innovation Letter. And then we add the Columbus Clause. And it's worthwhile looking at that. I understand that this treatment is new to this hospital. I will be one of the first patients to receive it here. I have been offered the standard treatment. My doctors and nurses are working to find the best way to perform the new treatment and learn which patients will benefit most from it. In other words, the patient has to be fully informed and be afforded that autonomy that is one of the four major hallmarks of the patient's rights. And so that is a plan. Now, we all know if you don't plan something new, something happens, and the results can be disastrous. So we are all well aware that if we're going to do some serious operation that's innovative on a patient, we have to plan it very carefully and make sure we communicate all those changes to everybody involved. Now, I'm going to tell you a few stories, if you don't mind. And if you do mind, we're going to lock the doors. To demonstrate some of the innovative cultures that we have here at UHN, these stories, I hope, will illustrate some of the exciting things that are happening. March 25th of 2007 was deemed World Storytelling Day. Storytelling has been for millennia the tradition by which cultures are sustained from generation to generation, whether they be the stories told by Canadian Aboriginal elders to their children and grandchildren, or the familiar modern-day stories on film or in print. Our current stories are really our contemporary versions of all those myths described by Joseph Campbell in his wonderful television and book series some years ago. The common thread in all these accounts, whether they be myths or actually based on real events, is that we take ourselves out of our current existence, place ourselves in another dimension, be moved by events and characters, and change even imperceptibly our view of life and perhaps our behavior. We can listen to a lecture and hear and memorize facts, but if we are moved, we learn. Stories inform, heal, and celebrate the life we share on this planet. I suppose it's appropriate that this year, World Storytelling Day, fell on the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, the phase of new beginnings for those of us who have just survived another Canadian winter, or at least until it resurfaced a few weeks ago. But I think we're in the clear now.
They're not that different from you, are they? Same haircuts, full of hormones, just like you. Invincible, just like you feel. The world is their oyster. They believe they're destined for great things, just like many of you. Their eyes are full of hope, just like you. Did they wait till it was too late to make from their lives even one iota of what they were capable? Because you see, gentlemen, these boys are now fertilizing daffodils. If you listen real close, you can hear them whisper their legacy to you. Go on, lean in. Listen. You hear it?
For those of you who think that this is pure schmaltz, this use of stories, narratives, and creativity in medical education and professional development is becoming an important tool in educating, developing, and inspiring the doctors and nurses who will take care of us and our children. It's becoming part of the medical undergraduate and other curricula. So I'm going to relate some UHN stories, and I hope these will demonstrate how all members of surgical services, that is doctors, nurses, allied health personnel, managers, and others, have innovated and contributed in their own ways to take us forward and be a part of progress. Hopefully the vignettes today will emphasize not only ingenuity and creativity of UHN's dedicated healthcare providers, but also the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that any success we enjoy has to pay homage to the tremendous courage and will of our patients and their families. Oh, and this just in, from a recent study published in the British Medical Journal, researchers at the University of Barcelona found in a small study that male surgeons are more attractive to women than other doctors. It's true. The researchers point out, and I quote, I kid you not, surgeons spend a lot of time in operating rooms which are cleaner, cooler, and have a high oxygen content than the average medical ward, where physicians spend most of their time, which could help surgeons keep their looks. End quote. I know our nursing colleagues will agree that this may give the frail egos of our surgical colleagues like Tony Finelli and Neil Fleshner here a much needed boost.